Hey, thanks for choosing to click and watch the video. I make them out of a passion for sharing knowledge and experience and building community, but it's still a big investment in time, resources, and effort to plan, shoot, edit, and post them. If you feel that knowledge, time, and effort have value, I welcome and appreciate anything you might want to tip to show that, and I've put a link to PayPal in the description below. There will also be links to the other parts in the video series and a list of the basic tools I used for the entire project. I hope it's helpful. Now on with the show. Hey guys, so yeah, I'm replacing the nut as part of rehabbing and refurbishing this Rickenbacker Model 345 from 1967. And enough people said they were interested in learning from the experience that I thought I'd make this impromptu video on how I do it. And I'll try to keep it simple and clear, but try not to forget any important steps here or explaining them. And I'll probably break it into two more parts. The next one will be removing the old nut, and then I'll put the installing of the new nut in a separate part, separate video. So there's plenty of videos on how to replace a nut all over YouTube. I mean, what makes a Rickenbacker a little bit particular is the way the nut is installed, and especially with this truss rod cover. So I'll put up a couple of pictures to compare to Gibson or Fender. You'll notice that with Gibson, the nut slot is actually cut into the wood at the end of the fretboard at the transition to the headstock. And it's actually a channel, routed through the wood, and the nut actually sits inside that channel. On Fender, that channel is actually cut across the fingerboard just before the end of the fingerboard drops off to that scoop down to the headstock. But with Rickenbacker, what you'll notice is that the truss rod cover actually creates the channel for the nut. So, of course, you've got the end of your fingerboard, then you've got the bed created by the neck and headstock wood. But then this plexi plate screwed in here is what kind of creates the retaining wall on the backside of the nut. So what we want to do here is first thing we're going to do is take a look at the state of the overall nut. So as we look at it, I was kind of surprised to find a white nut on a Rickenbacker, because every Rickenbacker I've ever seen throughout the decades has had a black nut, and presumably probably a black tusk, graphite infused nut, I'm going to guess. And this was the first time I'd ever seen a white one, but someone did say that certain vintages, and I guess they mentioned 67 specifically, they might have tried out ivory, and this does look and feel quite a bit like ivory, a lot more than it does bone to my eye, and just from tapping on it and kind of listening to the sound of it. But in any case, the 56 years since have not been kind to it, or the owners since have not been kind to it, because you're going to notice right away a couple of the slots are blown, especially here on the D string. They actually ended up with a double slot. I'm not at all sure how that happened, but yeah, you see somehow, and it's kind of weird. It's, if it had actually just blown the slot, I would expect the slot to go, clear across the space, but there's actually, still a portion of nut raised up between the two slots. So I not sure what at all happened there. Also looking at it, it's got all the signs of having been actually re-glued already. Now I know that it has, even before really looking at it in detail, because I do know this guitar was refretted, and actually in the refretting they actually replaned the fingerboard surface itself. Now both of those things, if you're going to do it right, you pretty much have to remove the nut, and that actually spells a lot more trouble than a factory stock nut, because the chances for over gluing are massive, and of course that's going to make it a lot trickier potentially to get off of there. Benefit of the factory installed nut is actually a benefit of cost cutting. They're going to use a minimum of glue, and it's really all you need. So they're going to use 1, maybe 2 drops of glue, and those would typically pop off pretty easily. Here, since, like I said, this is all impromptu and you're seeing it as I do it, I don't know exactly what I'm in for, but I'm already thinking ahead to what I'm going to do about it. In any case, let's talk about some things you're going to need. So obviously you're going to need a Phillips screwdriver to remove your truss rod cover plate. You're going to need, well, since I have one in my hand, I'll tell you right now, I would recommend a mechanical pencil. Thickness will be perfect for you. I would recommend, if you have one, or even go out and get a small Carpenter square, so something like this, or one of these, or bare minimum, just a square cut piece of wood that rises up to the height of the nut, and make sure that that wood is cut square. We'll talk about why in just a minute. I'd recommend you get a ruler that's marked at minimum in 30 seconds or 64ths, even better. And you could go ahead, get one of these string action gauges. They are really, really handy and almost indispensable once you start working on your guitar, or even if you just want to know what the specs are on your guitar. You can do just so many things with these, and they have a handy conversion for inches, fractions to decimals to millimeters, so inch to millimeters. You can get them from a bunch of different luthier supply houses. There's an example of one. Here's another handy one. So, you can search around and find one pretty easily. I would recommend, if you're going to get one specifically technical piece of equipment, I would definitely recommend it be a string space rule. This one is from, the big guys. Runs about $36. Money well spent if you have more than one guitar, and whether you do the work or you take it in to be done, this is really handy. Basically, it's going to allow you to measure the distance of your strings, right, from each other, the space between each string, and proportionately, and that's extremely important. You got to remember that the strings get thicker as you get into the wound strings, and that thickness, you've got to account for that when you're talking about the distance, right? Because if you just put each slot equally spaced, the thicker strings are going to start to give you less space in between your bottom strings than the super thin plain top strings. So the beauty of this string space rule is that these increments, as you go from the bass side on the left, or bottom strings, to the treble side, there you go, see, bass, treble. So it's pretty much foolproof. And trust me, I've tested that theory. You know, so as long as you line it up along the nut like that, with the bass side, treble side, those slots actually get progressively a skosh further apart throughout the length of the ruler. And as you can see, you've got just, you know, the full range of potential string spacing for just about any stringed instrument here. One really important thing, if you aren't familiar with these and you do want to pick one up, you're going to notice there are two sets of slots. So you want to stay consistent. So if you're measuring the space with the slots that are closer to the edge of the rule, you want to only be looking at the slots that are closer to the edge of the rule. Those are different space than the ones that are further back away from the edge of the rule. Okay? And so basically, yeah, you're just going to slide that along until you find the slots that align with your string. And of course, on the wound strings, you want to look at the center of that string. And then you can even go ahead and, you know, you could take a piece of tape, you could write on there just to record. So if you have a string spacing that you're in love with, now you've got a reference, and you can even go back and forth to your guitar tech and just say, yeah, I want it like this. And, you know, there you go. Picture's worth 1,000 words, right? No guesswork. So I think that's all there is to explain about that. And of course, if you have any questions, please just put them in the comments. I don't always get to them right away. And for some reason, I don't always get notified immediately of questions. But sooner or later, I do go back and catch up to them. So, you know, go ahead, put your thoughts or your questions in, and I'll do my best to get back to you in a fairly timely manner. Anyway, going back to things we need. Now, you know, having some kind of ruler with smaller increments is, you know, essential, I think. And that can get you a pretty far way. It would be handy, so I won't say essential, but handy, to have either manual or digital calipers. You're going to see why that comes in pretty handy in just a moment, but since we're going through our grocery list right now, I'll just say it is. And basically, you know, if you're not that familiar with these, get it turned on here. Yeah, my battery hasn't died. There we go. So you can, with the calipers completely closed, you can reset to 0. You've got your measurement in millimeters or inches and decimals, right? And of course, to the millimeter. So super, super handy for sure. Next, you're gonna want an Xacto knife with a number 11 blade, nice fresh number 11 blade, or bare minimum, a nice fresh razor blade. You are going to want a small dead blow hammer, and what makes it a dead blow hammer is that on the back side of the hammer you have it loaded up with sand. And so the idea being that when you strike the blow against your object, that sand helps carry all of the momentum, all of the energy into the impact against that object. There's no recoil. So you're not losing any energy, you're getting full impact on that object. So see if you can hear the sand. you are going to want to get creative, and you want to get either, let's see here, if you got an original one. Believe it or not, if you have an Asian takeout near you, just the takeout wooden chopsticks. Grab yourself a pair of those. I would recommend, unused. And you're going to want to saw down a portion of that to a point that's no wider than the width of your nut, because this is what you're going to be doing to knock that nut off. I actually came across a golf tee. So if you're a golfer, hey, you're in luck. And I went ahead and just sanded the pointed tip down to a flat one. The reason for that is, and either way you go, you want to stay with a flat end. When you're going to pop the nut off, you want a blunt end for a complete energy transfer across the entire width of that nut. You don't want a point. A point could plant itself into the material, and now you've got this thing stuck in the nut potentially before it comes off, and then it just becomes kind of a fiddly pain in the butt. Or potentially you could end up splintering that nut, and it's a lot less predictable when you've got separate pieces flying across that guitar. So having just the full width, a lot more predictable. So we'll get back into how we're going to do that later, right? And lastly, and again, I would say this is pretty indispensable. You want to get yourself some painter's tape. Now, this is the lowest tack painter's tape that you can get. It's frog tape, and you do want it to be low tack. They do make a special guitar repair or luthier's tape, but it's probably like triple the price or even more. This serves just fine as long as you're not leaving it on the guitar for more than like 2 weeks. You should be okay. And if you go any stickier than this, you're going to want to de-tack that on your clothes a little bit and get it down to pretty low tack. But definitely this is a must-have. And that's it for our grocery list. Let's get down to looking at where we're at with the existing nut and getting it off there.